Okay, and good morning, everybody, and welcome to our continuing work with the science of triangles. And I assume, Michael, that it looks like we are recording. I didn't have to press it, so maybe you did. I'm not
Uh,
sure.
the indication is the session is being recorded.
Yeah, okay. Well, we hope. Yeah, it says so. Well, welcome, and we will get into some more triangles and maybe take a look at your own situation of how you are living out in a soul expression your rising sign. Hopefully, everybody will have their horoscope at least somewhat in mind so that the rising sign is known. If not, there's not time to really do that right now, but it'll have to be done, of course. And I know you all know that. So I want to welcome Anna and Annette, Catherine, Chris, Ishtar, Carrie, Mariana, Mariut, Martha, Martine, Natni, and Nesa, Tia, Zenaidi. Welcome, those of you who could make it. And Michael's here to keep us on target. So, I have not ceased yet to do Great Invocation number 2. I think that the way things are going, there's no question about a transition to a new blue administration that may have many difficulties depending upon the work done in Georgia for this double runoff election. I know that some of you are not from the United States, but it really it will determine whether a more soul aligned um, program will go into effect or whether it will be blocked at every opportunity by a Senate, which is still staunchly conservative. Nothing wrong with that, but reactionary, there is something wrong. Backward looking, there is something wrong. Materialistic and selfish, then there's something wrong. So there's much to be looked at in the days ahead. I think the runoff date is, am I correct? Is it December the 5th? I think so. Unless it's January the 5th. I hope
I
I'm.
think it's January 5.
Is it January? Well, then there's plenty of time to work, and we'll have to work on that. Um, and equally as importantly, we have over 70 million people who basically have voted for the embodiment of the dweller on the threshold in the United States. So this is, a severe split, and they speak glibly of civil war. Well, a psychological civil war is already raging, and it can have its effect in the greater battle of humanity's angel of the presence with its dweller on the threshold. So we're by no means out of the woods when it comes to the critical thinking that it takes to really discern good from bad, even, and good from evil. I mean, that no one's entirely good, of course, even as Christ said, why call you me good? Only God is good. But there are tendencies towards the good and towards the expression of the plan, which those working under the color indigo try to bring forward. And those working under the darker red of Mars seek division. You know, if you really look at it, Mars rules so many aspects of the personality and the personality itself. It rules the dense physical body, it rules the astral body, it rules the concrete lower mind, and it rules the entire personality as a whole. I'm not including the etheric body because it's kind of in a category all of its own. And maybe Vulcan has more to do with the etheric body. There is an ongoing battle between Vulcan and Mars, between the spiritual will and desire, normal desire. So we need to somehow look at a triangle where we have Mars, Vulcan, and Neptune. And I think you could see from that, or maybe I should say Mars, Neptune, and Vulcan, that from the lower desire of Mars, which is separative and frictional and warlike, we will have an elevation to the higher point in the solar plexus, about which Master DK speaks. It's a Neptunian point, and that will begin to raise up towards the heart and towards a responsiveness to the spiritual will, which eventually all of us will have to have. And the real blows against glamour will occur when that kind of ability to stand in a Vulcanian manner with massed intent is the method of many more human beings than at present is the case. Right now we have rampant desire, blindness, and basically when you're under the spell of desire, which is furthered by the lodge of darkness, when you're under that spell, you just don't see. And you certainly don't see the soul as it is, and you have no wish to live the self-sacrificing life that the soul response requires. And we have millions and millions of people in the United States that are still in that stage. Now you could say, well, one good thing that might happen, because the law of cycles, prevails. The sixth ray is, for a time, and we don't know how long, passing out of incarnation in its application to the human race as a whole. It will re-enter, of course, and there will be many sixth-ray personalities, just as there are many third-ray personalities. But when it comes to the sixth-ray soul group, they are passing out of incarnation, and they tend to be younger souls. In other words, 4, 5, 6, 7, the souls of attribute tend to be, many of them, younger. And it's only when we begin to really approach the first initiation, which is a lot more than just saying, I believe, that the sixth ray can change into the second ray, most probably, and also in the case of many, into the third ray. But those are rays of aspect. But until the period of the first initiation begins to dawn, that does not happen, especially the change from the 6 to the 2. Maybe in a period of growing intelligence, the 6 can change to the 3. But anyway, that's why the whole program of the reappearance of the Christ and the taking of the first initiation by sufficient numbers of humanity to leaven the whole mass is so vitally important. So I think, we need to be able to remind ourselves of why we continue to stand guard esoterically as esoteric members of the new group of world servers. Not everybody is, and they can be terribly effective without knowing a word of the kind of esotericism we study. But we have some esoteric knowledge, a little, and we can bring it to bear meditatively on the situation, and it's important that we continue to do so. So let us then focus here on the Lords of Liberation and their will to bring increasing freedom to humanity. There are so many people that are enslaved still to this day, either literally enslaved, and that still goes on, or economically enslaved, and maybe we can say dogmatically enslaved. They are still believing in certain rigidities which just have been outworn and are outlived, and they don't know it. So they have a slavery to certain, I can't even call them ideas, they're just thought forms, and they're trapped. So we continue to seek liberation for them and increasingly for ourselves, so we can be of some use. Okay, then. Let the Lords of Liberation issue forth. Let them bring succor to the sons of men. Let the rider from the secret place come forth, and coming save. Come forth, Almighty One. Let the souls of men awaken to the light, and may they stand with massed intent. Let the fiat of the Lord go forth. The end of woe has come. Come forth, O Mighty One. The hour of service of the saving force has now arrived. Let it be spread abroad, O Mighty One. Let light and love and power and death fulfill the purpose of the coming one. The will to save is here. The love to carry forth the work is widely spread abroad. The active aid of all who know the truth is also here. Come forth, O Mighty One, and blend these three. Construct a great defending wall. The rule of evil now must end. And I would say about this, we have to make sure that the rule of evil doesn't even really begin again. At the time that this was given out, and of course it is an ancient mantra, the Axis powers were running roughshod over Europe. The two-front war has not yet begun, with the Soviet Union of the time, but Europe was being conquered, and only England, the Great Britain, was holding out. It was a huge test of wills. And so, in many respects, evil was ruling, and for the next 2 years, until the end of 1942, when the Lords of Liberation took action, evil was increasing. It's hard to believe the existential implications for humanity which were in process at that time. And of course, we cannot let that happen again. Hopefully, the disciples of the world are more alert now, the communication systems better, and the will to resist the dweller on the threshold is more firmly established. I just must also say, this seems to be, I know quite a few different things going on here, but for Americans anyway, there is a Thanksgiving occurring tomorrow. Of course, it means different things to different people, and some people very disappointed in the recent election maybe think they don't have much to give thanks for. But the possibility that a rampant pandemic focused most grievously in the United States will come under much better control, that's something to be thankful for. And the Center for Disease Control, that has had such frustration with the present and outgoing administration, is anticipating, a much more sound approach to the diminishing of the terrible effects of the epidemic. I mean, can you imagine 150,000 people a day or more becoming infected, and the death rate equaling that of the worst period earlier in the year? I think it was May. I mean, the numbers are staggering. But the possibility that these vaccines are emerging and that people will be, in fact, eventually more careful under better guidance, that's something to be thankful for. It's also, if I may say, when blue replaces the darker red, when indigo, the great ray of synthesis and love wisdom, well, not entirely replaces, but at least begins to dominate the darker red of Mars. That is something to be thankful for, regardless. There's so much childishness in a false spirit of personal independence, which does not care about the welfare of others. It's a kind of a teenage rebellion, a defiance of wisdom that simply knows better. And that is something that many Americans have to outgrow. And of course, many will be removed from incarnation, and the seventh ray will be increasingly dominating, reinforced, by the strong seventh ray cycle that is accompanying the age of Aquarius. I mean, you can have 6 ray cycles accompanying the age of Aquarius. 5th ray, you can have any ray cycle accompanying an age of Aquarius, but this time it is the 7th ray. And there will be more of a level head and practicality and ability to bring heaven to earth. Many things, therefore, to be thankful for, even though these 4 years, 4.5 years before the Great Conclave of 2025, will command the attention of the forces of opposition. If you think about that, because they are forces of obstruction and they seek to delay what we call the good from influencing the human psyche. So we also have to be thankful for the fact that we can, with our own esoteric techniques and our own maybe wider understanding because of the teaching of the Tibetan, that we can form part of the resistance movement against these forces of delay. Now, that's a great opportunity, and we can welcome that opportunity, even though it will not be easy upon us. It will demand sacrifice. Nevertheless, we can do that, and we must do that, and we must really, it's not just what we call the post-election period here. We have to be politically, spiritually, financially, in every way, watchful, lest these militant forces, there's a big 6 right in front of us here, 6 a.m., I should say 6 a.m., but lest these things get out of control. And there are forces that seek to have them dominate. So we have our work cut out for us, obviously. We're on page 88 here. No, excuse me. It's the number. It's Science of Triangles 88 and page 494, 495, right in there. And last time we dealt with some progressions from one planet to another, and we arranged them, sort of combinations and permutations, so that we could see what the process was when a particular planet represented the goal and when a different planet in the triangle represented the goal, and so forth. Maybe the most important thing for you and for me at this stage of our evolution is to make sure that our rising sign combines with our soul ray to produce the strongest possible soul expression in our lives. Those are the 2 points. And you can just meditate on that for just a little bit before I get into the text. You're trying to live as a soul. You're trying to live as a being whose point of tension is the higher mental plane. Subplanes 2 and 3 particularly, because that's as far as the soul body goes. After that, when we're dealing with subplane number 1, we're already into the spiritual triad. And that's a different, still more exalted way of life, more impersonal, more planetary. But while we're building the causal body, whatever our rising sign happens to be in a particular incarnation is really important to combine with our soul ray. So just think of it for a moment. There are so many things to be built into the causal body. So many. And life after life, always something is built in. And as we progress in the opening of the petals of the egoic lotus, arranged in triangles, I might add, there is an increase in what can be built in. So that, if you have the x-axis and the y-axis, toward the later periods of development, there's a lot of rising along that y-axis, and increasing amounts can be built in because we know how to live more wisely. We know how to get more out of our particular rising sign. So, there are little mantras that we can use, not just the customary ones, like for instance, warrior am I, and from the battle I emerge triumphant. That's the Scorpio one. Or Sagittarius, I see the goal and reach that goal, and then I see another. But there are other mantras as well. And they too can be combined to give us a hint, especially soul ray mantras, like I still persist, or naught is but me, or the worker and the work are one, those 7 mantras related to the rays. So we have to use those in connection with our horoscope. And that's a very good thing to do, to think about the main triangle in your horoscope and how during the course of your life, this incarnation, you have moved progressively from the moon sign to the sun sign to the rising sign. And if we are successful in doing that, then chances are we're having a successful incarnation, not just to get stuck in the rotary past of the moon, and not just to get stuck in the probability for so many people of the sun sign, but to actually move into the driving energies of the rising sign. I have a little cat next to me. If you hear an accompaniment of singing dogs and meowing cats, they are aware that I'm in a different part of the house. And you see a tail there? This is Apollo. We have a cat called Sun and a cat called Moon, Apollo and Selena, and Apollo seems to want to be part of this broadcast at the moment. Let's take a look a little bit ahead. Oh, there he is. Okay. He's a wonderful cat. And getting a good start. Next thing I know, I'm going to have a cat on my back. Okay. Now, DK has given us certain of triangles, and he's the last triangle we dealt with was Taurus, Scorpio, Capricorn triangle. And if we take that in the normal zodiacal direction, it will be Taurus, Scorpio, Capricorn from desire, the incentive to evolutionary unfoldment in the human kingdom. You know, it's also the will towards knowledge and light. And Scorpio representing aspiration, even though, you know, we might also say that the highest form of idealistic aspiration is found in Taurus. He does tell us that. And certainly the Buddha was a great example of that. And then finally, the illumination of initiation, the liberation of the initiate. The main thing is, you know, get the most out of the signs with which you are endowed. The solar angel, the angel of the presence, having more wisdom than we as human monads, has chosen the energy structure with which we are endowed because the solar angel knows the need. Whereas I don't know how much we know on the inner side, but maybe we can, in the later days of evolution, combine our energies, our knowledge, with that of the solar angel, kind of mix them together, and maybe we too can see with a greater perspective as we advance in our evolution. So we've been dealing, you know, also with the three air signs as aspects of mind, remembering the normal dualistic mind of Gemini, representing in a way higher and lower mind, and then the super mind of Libra, which is the mind that involves spiritual will, and then the universal mind of Aquarius. So now he wants to add a few other triangles to this, and he says, here's another: Sagittarius, Cancer, and Leo. Now, it seems that you can take this triangle in either direction. He's, in a way, moving backwards with this triangle, but it's also possible to move forward. So obviously, the mode of development is the Leonian mode. And if we were to move from Leo to Cancer to Sagittarius, we would understand that Leo brings us the self-consciousness, and Cancer, incarnation, helps us to realize oneself as inclusive. And there's one of those mantras for Cancer from page 332 of the astrology book: the whole is seen as one. And finally, we would have the testimony of one of those intuitive signs which leads us into the spiritual triad and can be connected with the Buddhic plane through its tendency towards intuition. Now, that would be the normal mode of progression, but he's kind of presenting this as an earlier mode. First of all, we have to have what we call individualization. And the sign Sagittarius represents the animal man at that distant period in the past, who, through the influence of the angel, is becoming human. And a certain human direction is under taken. And this leads to repeated incarnations and into the mass consciousness, which is largely, it has to be instinctual at first. Sagittarius is a sign of instinct at first, because it's the direction, the hunter, that that the animal moves in. Even animal man as the hunter. And through incarnation, more and more experience is gathered, but it's still the mass consciousness. You're still immersed in the instinct provided by the elemental lives. And Sagittarius, as we know, has a lot to do with the elemental lives. If you look on page, I'll find a good page. This would be let's see. Esoteric Astrology, maybe page 35 or so. I think so. Yeah, well, there it is. Now, it's not very big, but maybe there's other ways to get there, but I don't want to spend the time here. The lunar lords are ruled by Sagittarius. So that is the instinctual part, which provides the basis of mass consciousness. But then comes the emergence into the real concrete mind. And that is ruled by Leo. With it is the fifth sign. And through Leo, you'll remember, comes the first ray, the will to rule, and also the fifth ray, the will to know. So self-consciousness emerges from the very instinctual early direction of animal man, who is the centaur at that time. He's the man and the animal together, into human incarnation more and more, but still instinctual of the mass, and then finally self-consciousness. Then you reverse that. You see, you can take triangles and go in either direction, and that's an important principle. The historical mode is one way to study, and the progressive mode that lies on ahead is another way. Now, if we have some of these signs with this triangle, we can progress from a growing self-consciousness that hopefully does not fall into the trap of egotism for too long, and then that great sensitivity of a Neptune kind, where we begin to embrace others as part of ourselves. And that would be a Cancerian mode, and then a Sagittarian mode, where we would actually begin to see as the soul sees, and see in a higher triadal way. So these three signs, whichever way we take them, have a lot to do with moving from instinct to intellect to intuition, or from individualization through repeated incarnations and into self-consciousness. Now, I assume that all of us who are interested in these matters, we have moved beyond the stage of self-consciousness per se. We're not all wrapped up in ourselves. The extreme there would be the narcissism that we have experienced in the last 4 years with the present occupant of the White House, a kind of a imprisoning narcissism caused by various psychological things, but also by the probability that Leo, the last degree of Leo, is the rising sign, and that the individual is in a Leo stage of developing the petals, the fifth petal, and that the fall from the tower, literally Trump Tower, is in process. See, there's a triangular development in the fifth petal from the impressive personality through the humbled personality, through the possibility of being the humbled aspirant, and culminating with the first degree. We have many intelligent people, powerful people, who have not reached the first degree. It's not an easy development. And if we would be mistaken if we say, oh, the first degree, everybody's done that. No, not at all. Oh, he's intelligent, he must have done that. She's intelligent, she must know. No. It's possible to be under the sway of Manas, the third ray, without having reached even the first degree. So we have to, in our assessment of where people stand and how we can interact with them, we have to realize that to be an initiate of the first degree is to really have the birth of the Christ in the heart. It gives you compassion that has been developed through pain, and it gives you a far more inclusive attitude towards many kinds of people, and it is not separative. Now, I think you can all recognize what I'm talking about here. We have had two candidates, and one of them represents the impossibility of having achieved the first degree, and the other represents the likelihood of having achieved that degree. At least that. Okay. Now, what else does he tell us? So we have kind of, I'm just collecting here what we have looked at, the mental triangle, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. What type of mind are you using? Are you using only the concrete mind, or have you gone into the higher mind, or is there ever any influence of super mind in your life, my life? We have to evaluate. And here with Taurus, Scorpio, Capricorn, we really are talking about the light. Both Taurus and Scorpio, as much as conventional astrology seems to counter-indicate it, are signs of the light. We know Taurus is the mother of illumination eventually, and Scorpio in the meditative sequence, starting from Leo and ending in Capricorn, represents illumination. From darkness to light. Lead us from darkness to light, from the unreal to the real, from death to immortality. You could simply take Taurus and Scorpio, and you could apply those two to those three phrases. Lead us from darkness to light, the darkness of instinct into the light of illumination on the Buddhic plane, from the unreal to the real. Well, who has a monopoly on glamour? But Taurus can be so sense-bound, and Scorpio coming in can one through detachment from the senses and from death to immortality, the death of submersion in form to the immortality of the Buddhic plane, which Scorpio rules as far as the human monads are concerned. And of course, in all of this, Capricorn, for the first 5 initiations, plays an increasing role. And then we've just looked over Sagittarius, Cancer, Leo, whichever way we want to turn it. And you can turn all these triangles in different directions according to the law of mutation. And you can have, in any period of your development, one of the signs of the zodiac being foremost in terms of the goal. And it's for you, when you look at your horoscope, to decide what is your zodiacal objective. Now, so often it simply will be the higher part of the rising sign, the driving energies of the rising sign. You will have those. Now, if hopefully the dogs don't start barking when somebody comes, especially someone they like or know, they really start to show that they are temple watchdogs. And okay, so there are other major triangles which are called triangles in consciousness. And as you well know, the most important of these for mankind is the triangle Cancer, Leo, Aquarius. Now he's giving us a new one, okay? He tells us we well know that, maybe we do. And what would it be? Well, these are the kinds of things we have to know. The movement from mass consciousness to individual consciousness to group consciousness. This is almost a defining triangle in the work of Alice Bailey. Now, her book is from intellect to intuition, but and she's assuming she's not writing for the mass consciousness. But if the title of the book were From Instinct to Intellect to Intuition, it would be this particular triangle, or this would be an important one in that way. We are surrounded by millions who have the Kama Manasic consciousness, the mass consciousness. It is instinctually driven. They're not necessarily integrated personalities yet. Some are, but you have to pretty much reach the Leo phase for that to happen. And I'm, just assuming that students such as we are of DK have reached and gone through that Leo phase where we have separated ourselves from the mass instinctual consciousness. But everywhere we see people more driven by their emotions and their lower desires, represented by the lower interpretation of the moon and Neptune in Cancer, and not representing the integrating Leonian sun of manifest individuality. But it's interesting, DK said, well, even that will present its own problems when more and more people start to become real personalities. Then a new phase of difficulty and maybe of contention will result. Maybe among powerful people, we are beginning to enter that phase. The Aquarian phase we have not entered. Even if you're born with the sun in Aquarius or Aquarius moon or Aquarius rising, it doesn't mean that you're going to respond in a progressive spiritual manner to the sign Aquarius. There are all kinds of very, you might almost call them reactionary people that have the Aquarius sun sign. Maybe, we might say they are responding more to the lower Saturnian rulership of Aquarius. And there's a difference there, between the Saturnian response to Aquarius and the Uranian response to Aquarius. We human beings, we tend to be, because we are beginners, more consciously conceited, he tells us, than the more experienced disciples. And we can either take that at face value and say, yes, you're probably correct, or we can fight against his assessment. But the further I go, the more I find that we do often overestimate ourselves and our spirituality. And the way to get over that is to take the eyes off the little personal self, hard to do really, and just invest oneself in real service, in real altruism, in really helping the other individual. So Cancer, Leo, Aquarius, I think you can see that, can't you? From the moon, in a way, to the sun of probability, to something more soul-centered, some possibility looming ahead in Aquarius and in the Aquarian age. This is an important triangle. It's necessary. When I was doing my work with every single triangle I could think of, I knew that some of them were important for the present age, and others were less important. And so, DK knows that. He can only present to us certain triangles, which, if we understand them, we'll understand certain processes which are important for us now. So, okay, Cancer, Leo, Aquarius, they are important at this time because the influences pouring through these three are basically responsible for the growth of the human understanding and the unfoldment not only of man's response apparatus, the form nature, but also his expanding perception of that which is contacted. So there's a double importance here. Not only the consciousness, which we would expect, but the form as well. And we all know that the more refined is the form, the greater the opportunity for a more sensitive consciousness. The higher the energies from the higher points of tension can work through a more refined form. I remember he was speaking to one disciple, and he was kind of making an evaluation of how the physical body was holding her back, and he said, well, you have a body that of a not especially high quality. He was just being kind of serious about it, kind of a Hungarian Semitic vehicle, and it was causing her a lot of trouble. And he said he wasn't going to deal with the personality in his letters, but in fact, he had to, because this is where people were hung up, oftentimes on physical or emotional issues. So maybe it was a surprise to him that he could not be directly truthful in that uncompromising way that he said he would be in the beginning, with Alice Bailey always saying to him, "Oh, you can't say that." But you have to do what you have to do. This is the story of our planetary logos, who took incarnation to demonstrate the scope of his life and to share those things, and found himself basically trapped in darkness and all kinds of instinctual tendencies, which he really didn't at first want to deal with. But apparently, whether it's symbolic or however it's presented, the Solar Logos heard his complaint and looked in the other direction in silence, saying, in a way, saying, "This is your job, and I have nothing more to say." So anyway, the form, nature, and the consciousness, moving forward under those three signs, this threefold process under these three constellations produces, finally, the identification with that perceived to be the divine essence underlying form. Now, when would that happen? And I think you can get a good whiff of it at the third degree, but at the fourth degree, the monad becomes impressive. And the causal vehicle, which has prevented the full impact of the monad, is destroyed in one way or another. Those ways are given in the beginning of letters called meditation. So the causal body is out of the way. The monad can be impressive. The monad is, at its heart, the divine essence. And why do I say all this? Because at the third degree, at the fourth degree, at the fifth degree, Aquarius can be very active and can help to produce that identification, which we're talking about here with the divine essence. And actually, we call that sometimes universal love, the universal love of the developed Aquarian and the pervasive wisdom of the developed Piscean. As one eventually, but initially the instinct of Cancer to the intellect of Leo to this intuition identification of Aquarius. Now, just because you're Aquarius, doesn't mean you have this. This has to do with real development. There are just so many Aquarians that are shockingly narrow in their interests. And as DK said, their entire interest is invested in the group in which they're playing a part. And that group can be expansive or quite narrow. We have on the Supreme Court some literalists. It's almost like, being a literalist with the Bible. The inerrancy of the English translation of the Bible is something like that. To be a literalist is not necessarily an originalist. It's not necessarily operating in the spirit of things. It's operating according to the letter. And that is possible for Aquarius too. So this identification with that which is the subjective and the real self, this can be promoted by Aquarius, and the consequent withdrawing from that which is the not self is the key of the fourth initiation. Now, we had, interestingly, in Krishnamurti, a man who was taking the fourth initiation, the Arhat initiation. That seems pretty well established. He was a Taurian individual. I think, trying to remember, was his moon, I know Mars was in Cancer, but was his moon in Sagittarius? Well, there's one way to quickly find that out. I can just, but he had Aquarius as his rising sign, and that was giving him his direction towards the fourth initiation. And Krishna, oh, it'd be nice to find it, wouldn't it? Let's see, Krishna. Well, I thought I had it here. I thought I had it maybe under the word disciple. I could maybe have it there. But maybe not. Anyway, he was a combination of Taurus and Aquarius. And maybe there's another way to find this. The cats are starting their caterwauling. They must be hungry. Krishna Murti, horoscope. And yes, he's very Taurian, and that's why they call him Alcyone. They called him Alcyone. And he was born on May 12th, 1895. And there is his chart with 20 degrees, the Gemini part of, excuse me, the Libran part of Aquarius. So, and his moon, yes, in Sagittarius. So he was a high soul, definitely. And living up to, well, Vulcan is very much involved with the fourth initiation. And Vulcan is the esoteric and hierarchical ruler of Taurus. And the fourth initiation can be taken, often is, in Aquarius, just the way the fifth initiation is taken in Aquarius. By the way, if you want to look up horoscopes, they have a lot now on the internet, and you just, put it in Google and you'll probably find your way there. But I do think, his death had a lot more to do with Mars in Cancer. And esoterically, Jupiter was also in Cancer, interestingly, as the esoteric ruler of his ascendant. And I've seen this numerous times, people taking the fourth initiation. I saw it in the chart of Sir Francis Bacon, and I think I saw it in the chart of Sir Thomas More, who is in the Initiate series of books. He seems to be the Sir Thomas that is there, and he's on the second ray. But when he was Thomas More, I believe Uranus in Scorpio was the indicator, and the other one I just mentioned, I forgot it, and Krishna Murti as well. So make the most out of your horoscope. In his case, the triangle would have been from Sagittarius, Taurus to Aquarius, and he certainly had the inner realizations, and he spread them far and wide. I mean, he gave talks in Ojai constantly, and his teaching really went all over the world. The masters had a few little disagreements with him, because he, somehow he had this very strong, independent first ray, and they complained that he was leading people away from them rather than to them, which is, I don't know, is it amusing? It's, anyway, he was a great teacher, no question about it. All right. Now, I think that's all that I do now. And next time will be an evening work, and I will try to keep my time straight here. So Aquarius is really a major target sign for high initiation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the individual who has it will use it in that way. That we do have to understand there's no such thing as looking at a horoscope without looking at the individual and somehow determining the status of whatever the horoscope represents simply by looking at the horoscope. You know, you can have people with quite a wonderful horoscope, but they can't respond to it, and people with really testing horoscope, and they make the most of it. So it's not locked up in any kind of rigid interpretation. And let's see here, from the 25th to the 2nd of December. Okay. I don't think we have a maybe there. That's probably pretty strong. And let's see, that will be a PM and not an AM. And that should do it. Okay, friends. So we've looked at, reviewed some triangles of Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And we have also looked at Taurus, Scorpio, Capricorn, which is an obvious move from instinct to initiation. And then we've looked at taking a triangle in two directions, and it involves the members Sagittarius, all the way from Animal Man to High Intuition, Sagittarius, Cancer, all the way from mass consciousness to holistic, inclusive consciousness. The whole is seen as one. And Aquarius, we've used that as the target, but believe me, there can be a kind of what would I call it, a waste of energy under Aquarius, a kind of a non-centrality, which has not even achieved the centralization of Leo. It is a scattered effect. But later it becomes the sign of universal mind and of illumination, initiation. And this is why, repeating myself, of course, and repeating decay, it is so utterly important to know what is the approximate stage of evolution of the person for whom you are working astrologically, rheologically, psychologically, spiritually. Somehow you just have to know that. I mean, if you find someone out there in the street screaming about his right to carry guns and have his way with attack rifles, you're not, you're dealing with the Martian vibration. You can't interpret it as you would for even a disciple or an initiate of the first degree. You cannot. Okay, so your turn. If you have questions or thoughts about this, let's see if we can look at them. And if not, then, we'll just carry on to tonight, which is the normal triangle meditation, really probably the most important thing we do. So, Michael, if you'll give me a hand here, appreciate that. And
I am looking for any hands raised or questions, comments posted in the chat box. Nothing is appearing at this moment.
right. What I can do, what I can do is to have you think of your rising sign and how it has worked to bring your soul into expression in this incarnation. That's something we all have an interest in, I think. Has the rising sign really become the source of driving energies? That's what he calls it, the driving energy of the rising sign. And he calls it I think something like the potency of the sun of possibility, not only probability. The sun sign is probable. Sometimes in my own life, I have the Aries sun, it's kind of probable to act without thinking or to plunge into things or, to push ahead no matter what. And, using Aries in the first ray, but without enough consideration of the environment and people and all that. But a Cancer rising sign, well, that would be a contradiction. And moving, in my own case, from the family to the larger family and from a certain type of protective uh, attitude towards the so-called near ones to a more larger protective Cancerian attitude towards a larger group. In the sign Cancer, you also have to look, in any sign, you have to look for the extra zodiacal constellations which rule or seem to be associated with the decanates. Now, in the sign Cancer, for instance, you have Argo, the ship, where I think Jason went after the Golden Fleece in that ship. But you also have the lesser sheepfold ruling the second decanate, and you have the greater sheepfold ruling the third decanate. And you can connect those, with one would be Scorpio, one would be Pisces, and so forth. There's a lot of different ways at looking at the place where you are born. When I say place, I mean the part of the sign in which or under which you are born. Even every 2.5 degrees, things change. When you divide 12 into 30, the 12 signs of the zodiac divided into the 30 degrees of the sign. And eventually, it will be well established that every single degree of any zodiacal sign has its own character. And some people try to get at what those are. So you can think about how it works in your own case. If you have a first ray soul and Leo is your rising sign, it's going to be a pretty powerful statement. But if you have a second ray soul and Leo is your rising sign, then the fact that Leo is the second of the fire signs will be important, and the fact that it relates more to the soul, with Aries to the monad and Sagittarius to the personality. It'll be a different mode of interpretation. So just pause on that for a moment. See, it's a guide. It's a guide. If you find the way to live according to the driving energies of the rising sign, it will take you closer to the center of your soul life, and then add to that your soul ray. So many of us are on the second ray in the soul, the educative, psychological, saving ray, but not all, not all. And when you combine a different ray soul with the same rising sign, that rising sign will work differently. So it's just a question of, it sounds so simple, but how do you get the most out of what you've been given in your astrological configuration and your ray configuration, so that when you come to serve, you are delivering to others the best you've got. Now, some of the mantras, on page 332 and 333 are important to add to your quiver of mantras that help you live aright. Some of the old statements from long ago can help you direct yourself forward according to soul impulse and soul objective. So this is something we're going to be thinking about ongoingly, because it will settle for us a kind of direction toward the type of learning which we are to achieve in this incarnation, and the kind of service we are to offer in this incarnation. Is there anybody who would like to either speak or write?
Well, Tia has provided a comment, writing very helpful, a lot to ponder.
Hmm. I agree that it is, Tia, a lot to ponder. And it's all a science, and the angel of the presence is a very astute being, supposedly having been to Sirius for training, whether in the past solar system or between solar systems, it's hard to say, but has returned to impart um, some of these higher realizations to the human monad now, who has not gone as far as that solar angelic angel of the presence monad. So we have to try to take a look at things from a higher perspective, from that point of tension that the angel of the presence represents. And the Christ is helping us with this by, I guess, being vital in the engineering of the first initiation for humanity. But do ponder on your rising sign and your soul ray, if you are pretty sure that you know them, and see what that combination might yield for you, and whether it is actually doing so. You can, assess your life, and maybe not in every period of your life will it deliver with equal potency. Maybe sometimes people have to go through their karma before they find their dharma, and ideally the karma should help lead to a better expression of the dharma, the the gift, the law that they have to enact. I think that's oftentimes the way we learn a lot through executing our karma, and it helps us when we get into a certain phase of our life where the Dharma is being expressed even more fully. Is there anybody else?
Nothing more is written in the chat box, and Mesa just rose a hand.
Would
Yeah,
she?
well,
Hi. Okay. Hi, Neza. Okay. Okay.
hi. So Scorpio rising, it's been so much fun. And I'm pretty sure like second ray soul. So bringing love to everything, you know, like trying to connect, maintain connection with love to,
Yep. And really having to go through it. You know, it deepens the love that a person can express through suffering and through sacrifice and through detachment. See, you're just not going to get Scorpio powerful in the chart without having some really impressive detaching experiences. And basically, if you read the Tibetan in Esoteric Psychology 2 under the Law of Sacrifice, he, every one of the soul laws he does elaborate on. We're going to see how these detachments deepen the love. You might not think so, but he says, look, the law of repulse, fourth law of the soul, which is a very scorpionic law, is actually an aspect of the law of love. And then he talks about parenting, and he talks about our attachment to our children and, to the near ones, and that we hesitate to let go. If you're second ray, you oftentimes hesitate to let go. Scorpio comes along and helps with that. It's often painful. And then the individuals are restored to you on a much higher turn of the spiral. So you don't really lose them at all. You find some deeper relationship with them. So it's really worth reading. The very first law of the soul, the law of sacrifice in Esoteric Psychology 2. He goes on there for quite a while. I mean, 20, 30 pages.
mm-hmm.
And it gives you the idea of what deeply psychological Scorpio can do to increase the depth of love. So the two can work together very well, even though Scorpio is so first ray in a certain manner. I mean, yeah, I know it's a fourth ray sign, but it's got a lot of Pluto, it's got a lot of Mars, and it's got a lot of Hercules. So it's a lot of first ray detachment, opening the door to a deeper type of love.
Yeah, my Pluto and my Mars are up there in my ninth house in Leo. So
Okay, and are they together?
that's,
Because if they are together within conjunction, it's helpful in destroying illusion. Pluto in the ninth house is an illusion destroyer. Sometimes Mars in the ninth house means being militant about a certain ideal or worldview, but along comes Pluto and brings the peeling away of misunderstandings that come through illusion.
so would
And
Saturn chunked in there too be like the seal the
oh
deal
yeah,
kind of?
I know you're born. I know when you're born now. Okay. Yeah, it's the Saturn, Pluto, Mars group. I had a friend that he's passed on now, but he was a wonderful astrologer, and he was associated with these groups. And all you had to do was tell him one or two positions in your chart, and he knew exactly when you were born. So it just yeah. Well, Saturn too. You see, it can lead if not well used, it leads to a restrictive orthodox view. But if well used, it is a worldview in line with the divine plan. So, Saturn is the divine plan, and the ninth house is your world view, your philosophy of life. So putting a lot of energy into that area is pretty obvious if their Saturn, Pluto, and Mars are all there. Mars can be very militant, and sometimes I call the position Mars in Leo the general. I just have met people with some pretty strong will, having Mars in Leo, but there is a way in which all of those can cooperate to clarify one's worldview. This has to be examined on a case-by-case basis, how it has worked for you and how you can make it work, you see. Always we want to improve our response to our horoscope, and we always can. We always can until the last minute, we can always keep on using the energies in a better and better way. So, yeah, uh, those three together are pretty strong. I mean, it's just how a person uses them, and in a way, you can only tell that by actually talking with the person at some length. The potentials are there, but what has been made of the potentials? That's the question. Yeah. Anything else?
Okay, Carrie asks, away from the current subject, but is it the solar angel of an incarnating jiva that chooses or attracts the rays and/or astrological configurations that will be most useful to the forthcoming life experience, or something else?
Oh, it's not an easy question. The jiva basically is that which descends from the monadic plane and takes up a kind of residence as the soul on the higher mental plane. Now you kind of wonder, we have a certain solar angel, uh, and its extension onto the higher mental plane I call the angel of the presence. And it seems that the solar angels themselves have rays, and that they are assigned to a human monad who is intended to have a certain ray operating on the higher mental plane. Now let's see. What I want to, if I think this is some place that I might benefit by looking actually at the words that Carrie is writing. Is the solar angel of an incarnating jiva? Well, okay, so we are an incarnating jiva. Is it he that chooses or attracts the rays? Yes, in the beginning, the wisdom of the angel of the presence on the higher mental plane, sustained by that larger being we call the solar angel, is the one that arranges for the human jiva to have certain rays in certain incarnations. At least that's my understanding of it, and certain astrological configurations. Now, later, it may be that between lives, we actually begin to develop causal consciousness in a fuller way, and then we, as the extension of the monad, our own monad, so to speak, participate in the choice, but not at first, because there's nothing in the lower worlds that is intelligent enough to do that. There's not enough experience of the incarnating monad with life in the lower worlds to really be useful in selecting the rays to come. But later, as experience is gathered, the secondary rays, anyway, probably not the ray of the soul. That's pretty well a foregone conclusion, based upon the plan of the monad. But there are many other rays. The note is sounded before incarnation. Its fullness or lack thereof is noted, and either the angel of the presence attracts the necessary rays, or some combination of that angel's consciousness, the monad's consciousness, and maybe the master too, combine to choose the astrological signs and rays. So I would say at first, the angel of the presence is at work. And then the extension of the monad, which we are, on the higher mental plane, can be later involved in the choice. This is my impression at this time. So we're getting some help from our friends, but who knows what we know and what we are when between incarnations we consciously return to the causal body as a fuller type of consciousness, which is really an extension of our own monadic consciousness. Who knows what we see? We probably see a whole lot more at this stage of our development than we have seen in past incarnations. So the solar angel is in on the choice, yes. But of course, I offer this as my current thought. And if proven to be incorrect, then I will assess what made me incorrect and adjust my thoughts, hopefully.
And I am seeing no other hands raised, and there's nothing more written in the chat box.
Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. And, like, who's responsible for our present incarnation and the equipment we have? We are pretty much disciples, aren't we? We're certainly at the stage where we aspire, and maybe as we aspire with more regularity and consistency, and as we become more mentally focused and more reliable, we become disciples. And did we, who really are the monad, or let's call it the extension of the monadic awareness onto the higher mental plane, how much did we, per se, in consultation with our angel of the presence and possibly with the master, who says he works with souls, how much did we know about our coming incarnation, and how much were we instrumental in the choice? In earlier days, we knew nothing, very little, about the lower worlds and what was required. And as we built ourselves up and built the causal body up, we became more and more cognizant of what the destiny of our monad, with respect to the higher mental plane and respect to the lower 18 worlds, what that destiny actually was. And we began to know how we could fulfill monadic destiny, which is our own fulfillment, because everything, we are the monad. We are that. I call us sometimes the monad in attenuation, meaning we don't have all the properties of the full monad at the 6th degree, but we have some. So in a way, all these things are the extension of the monad. And finally, although it maybe not be relevant here, all monads are the same. There's only one monad in a universe, just one. And we can call that the universal logos. But to be practical about it, we have to work with the mind and its various distinctions, and that part of the one monad which was in advance of whatever we were during the previous solar system has gone on for further training to Sirius and has come back to share, just the way many of us will. Maybe 80%, maybe 85%. The bulk of the human monads will take the fourth path and will be trained uh, within the range of the Syrian system. So it will have a different kind of application. We'll be working more with the monadic plane, he tells us, not so much with the higher mental plane in the future, but we will be trained on Sirius, and then we'll know something about the idea of monads that are ahead, are behind, and still yet in essence are only one. That's the kind of paradox we have to deal with. Everything's different and yet everything is one. It's the paradox of the one and the many, which somewhere along the line we have to learn to solve. Okay, so just a tiny reflection. We begin to see the interplay of so many energies. We may not yet be the astonished or the astounded, whichever word it is, initiate, standing symbolically on the mountaintop of initiation, but more and more we can understand the passage of the energies and their interplay, and more we can get the most out of them and express them as optimally as may be possible in our service work. That should be a great objective, to express our energy endowments optimally in our service work. So we will close with the normal Great Invocation. Invocation number 3, given out in 1945, kind of a climaxing invocation for humanity at this time. It doesn't mean we know all the mantras, we certainly don't, but this is a powerful one and is playing its part in world transformation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you, everyone. And this evening at 6 p.m. GMT, we have the broadcast for our normal triangles work. And then at 8 p.m. GMT, we continue for the time being with our daily vigil on the American scene, the post-election scene, and involving so many people under the sway of glamour disbelieving facts, the post-truth, post-fact era. We try to contribute to clarification there. Thank you for your attendance. Lots of love from the whole communications group. And Tuya and I will be with you a little later today. Well, are today anyway. So we'll see you. Bye-bye. This will be on Makara soon.